Welcome to another episode of the PS We Expire podcast. I am your host, Morgan Motzinger, and today I want to talk with you about your beliefs. I'm not talking about religious beliefs necessarily. I'm really just talking about the beliefs that we have that inform our behavior in the world. So the beliefs that we have about other people, the beliefs that we have about ourselves, the beliefs that we have about beliefs. I want to introduce to you 3 beliefs that you can adopt. And I'm not going to tell you what they are in the introduction, but I will say number 1 is, I'll just tell you this one. Number 1 is that you can change your beliefs. And this may not seem like a big deal, but this was a huge deal to me a handful of years ago when I started to really have some big shifts in my perspective on the world and my perspective, my beliefs about myself, that when I understood that I have the option of believing whatever I want to believe, there are no rules about this. There are no rules about what you believe, so that you get to choose beliefs that actually help you live the life that you want to live. So thank you for joining me for this episode. Before I jump into the episode, I do want to invite you to download the free ebook on my website. It's also in the show notes, to download this ebook called Know Thyself. It really is just like, I love learning more about myself. I'm a little bit of a personality test junkie. I think I've probably done all of them at this point, so I don't know how many new ones there are for me to take. But what I like about this so much is that the more that I understand about myself, the more that I have questions that I can answer that I haven't been asked before, so that I know more things about myself than I knew before I took these tests. Then I can start to recognize the patterns and the habits in my own life. And that's when you can change. You cannot change something that you cannot identify, that you cannot measure. So this free ebook just introduces to you 3 of my very favorite personality tools, so that you just get to know yourself a little bit better, so that when you want to make change in your life, you have more information about you. And many times we don't slow down long enough to ask ourselves these questions. So you can download this ebook, take it at your own pace, and learn more about yourself so that you can change your life to be exactly what you want it to be. So thank you for joining me for this episode of the PS We Expire podcast. I'm so glad that you are here. When I am out riding my motorcycle, I have 3 beliefs that I have just decided to act as if they are true. Now, I know that riding a motorcycle is the most dangerous thing that I do. It's the most dangerous activity that I participate in on a regular basis. And so the beliefs that I have adopted for when I'm riding my motorcycle, I have decided to act as if they're true in order to keep me safe. So the 3 things that I believe about other drivers when I'm out riding my motorcycle is, number 1, I believe that they can't see me. So I just expect that I will be invisible to people, that they will not see me out of the corner of their eye, that they won't see a tiny motorcycle in the midst of a lot of big vehicles. So I always act like people cannot see me, which means that I give myself a lot of space between me and the car in front of me. A lot of times if I see someone starting to pull out, I will brake or move or shift my handlebars so that my light flickers so that they will see me. I imagine that people cannot see me. I also believe that other drivers will brake or turn suddenly without warning. Again, this just gives me some extra space. I put extra space between me and other vehicles, and I just always anticipate that something is going to happen really suddenly, and I need to give myself time to react. And the 3rd thing that I act as if is true is that all the other drivers are drunk or tipsy. I don't actually believe these 3 things about other drivers. I believe for the most part that other drivers are conscientious, aware. I hope that they're not on their phones texting or, on social media or, scrolling through looking for another podcast episode or song to listen to. But I act as if these things are true because they help keep me safe. They help keep me more aware and more hypervigilant to my surroundings. They help me just open up my perception more and think about drivers in a different way. The reason why I'm telling you this is because all of us go through life with these beliefs that we have that we act as if they are true. And most of the time, we operate from a place of believing these things are true, and we don't ever investigate more, and we don't ever challenge those beliefs. This may seem like a really obvious thing to many people, but for me, just a handful of years ago, this was an absolute revelation that my beliefs were a choice, that I got to choose how to view other people, that I got to choose how to view life, that I got to choose how to view the circumstances that were happening to me, that I got to choose what to believe about myself. This was probably one of the first dominoes, I would say, in my journey. I know that's like a really popular phrase right now, my spiritual journey, but it's true because it is like this. Every step of the way, there's just a little bit more light that illuminates the next step and the next step and the next step. And there's this kind of domino effect or like stacking effect that happens when you start to adopt a different way of thinking about life, that in the way that I describe, like the start of my journey being like dominoes, it's like when those first couple dominoes fell, and then all of a sudden there was this whole line of beliefs and perceptions that were challenged and toppled. And I had to really like start to rebuild my belief structure about the world. And there were a lot of really influential people that I listened to, books that I read, and I won't get into that on this episode. I really just want to talk about 3 beliefs that have made the biggest impact on me and that I would recommend that you perhaps adopt yourself. So the first belief is that you can change your beliefs. This may seem so super obvious, but I think that it is profoundly hopeful when we recognize that the way that we've always thought about things isn't the way we always have to think about things. So for instance, like if you have struggled for a really long time with this internal dialogue that is really negative, if you have negative self-talk, if you have, a lot of stress and anxiety, it's so helpful to know that you are not stuck in that for the rest of your life. You do not have to continue to have those things in the same way that you've had them. You don't have to continue to have those beliefs about yourself in the same way. At any point along the way, you can change your beliefs. They used to believe, like in neuroscience and psychology and psychiatry, they used to believe that neuroplasticity, the flexibility in our brains to adopt new ways of thinking, to be able to change our minds, to be able to learn new things. They used to think that that only happened in childhood. And that's, in some ways that is kind of true, not so much that it's only available in childhood, but I'm sure that you know from your experience that when you were a kid, it was so much easier to learn things. And a lot of that is because as our brains are developing, there are so many neurons that are firing and wiring together. So there are so many neural pathways that are being connected. And then you go through a period within your mental development where there is a lot of pruning that happens. So if as a child is learning a skill, if they don't continue to refine that skill, those skills get pruned, they get cut away, to make sure that there's not a lot of energy going towards these neural pathways that aren't really getting used. So we do go through this period of development where there is so much learning happening and so much cognitive flexibility as we as children are learning new and important skills, the foundational building blocks to some of these other skills. So like learning to sit up, roll over, crawl, stand, walk. These are all skills that are being stacked. And our brains are developing at a phenomenal rate. All of these new connections are being made. These new skills are being developed. And then we go through a period of pruning where so many of the things that we don't need are kind of cut off. And like I said, they used to believe that neuroplasticity really only happened up until a certain age, and that, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. what they have found is that neuroplasticity continues throughout our entire life, which is so exciting because that means that we don't have to worry about that if I'm in my 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, that I can't do something new, that I can't change my life. I can't uproot old beliefs or shift my way of thinking. It may be more difficult because the longer that we continue to believe things, the deeper the grooves are made in our minds and the faster those connections are. So if someone has been taught and raised in a way where they have really racist beliefs or homophobic beliefs, if they continue in those beliefs, the older and older that they get, those grooves are more worn and those connections are faster. So it is more difficult to bump out of those beliefs, but it is not impossible because our brains stay flexible throughout our entire lives. We have the ability to learn new things, which means that we have the ability to change our beliefs. When I'm talking about changing our beliefs, the more that you can adopt humility when it comes to hanging on to what you think you know is true, the more that you can hold that with open hands, knowing that the things that you believed, 5 or 10 years ago, maybe are not the things that you believe now, because in that time span, you got new information. I think about like poor Pluto being the planet and then not a planet. And is it a planet again? I don't even know. But when I was in school, I was taught that Pluto was a planet. And then as there was more information that came up, there was more discovery that came up, there were more hypotheses that were tested and tried, and they discovered that Pluto actually doesn't behave like a planet, and it was removed from our solar system as a planet. That we have to do that. We have to be willing to do that with our personal beliefs. We have to be willing to hold them lightly and say, with new information, I will be okay with challenging and testing my own beliefs. Now, that is obviously like really, really scary to so many people, because when we have like a really tight and firm grip on our beliefs, a lot of times we will build our identity, that we build our sense of self on those beliefs. And if those beliefs are challenged, many times people end up floundering and wondering, well, who am I then without these beliefs? For me, a big shift for me came from a change in my spiritual beliefs. So the way that I was raised, I really built my identity, my sense of self, my sense of worth, my sense of purpose was built on those particular beliefs. And as I got older and I started to study more and learn more and talk to other people who had a different upbringing than I did, they had a different experience of religion and spirituality than I did, I started to question those beliefs. And you better believe that that was extraordinarily painful and scary to go through that, to see these firm foundations start to crumble and dissolve as I gained more information and a different awareness of the reality of the world and the reality of how things work. So this is not easy, but I do believe that it is very, very hopeful and full of possibility, because if you have struggled with believing things, particularly about yourself, that have just contributed to so much self-criticism, self-doubt, lack of confidence, maybe self-loathing or hatred, you can know that when we can capture our beliefs and we can adjust our beliefs, when we become aware of them, that we have the ability to change the narrative. We have the ability to change those beliefs. And one of the things that, like I talked about, in my very silly metaphor of riding my motorcycle and assuming these beliefs about other drivers, is that sometimes it doesn't necessarily matter that we are so convinced that those beliefs are true, because many, many beliefs that we don't really have any way to prove them. So what I'm going to suggest is that you adopt beliefs that you know are good for you, and then you act as if they are true, even if you don't feel like it. This is a really, really powerful place to engage with life from. when you recognize that, okay, I don't necessarily have to have all the evidence or the feelings that align with this, but I'm going to choose my beliefs that help me show up in my life the way that I want to. So I will act as if those beliefs are true in service of my health, my happiness, my life satisfaction, and what makes my soul come alive. So number 2, out of the 3 beliefs to adopt, number 2 is that everyone is doing the best that they can with the internal and external tools that they have. If we go through life assuming that everybody is bad, that everybody's out to get us, that you can't trust anybody, that is what you will see in other people. It's inevitable. It's kind of like, it's like when you get a new car, or like we're trying to sell our van right now, and I'm going to get a smaller vehicle. And the cars that I have been researching, all of a sudden I start seeing everywhere on the road, so I'm like, oh, there's that vehicle right there. Oh, there it is again. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize how many of these vehicles there are out on the road, because I didn't have my awareness attuned to those. So if we are always looking for the bad in other people, our brains only have so much capacity to pay attention to our surroundings at any given moment. So if we are telling our minds, everybody's out to get me, everybody's a jerk, everybody is untrustworthy, unsavory, whatever, that is what our awareness is going to be attuned to. Kind of like that same thing. If you are looking for that vehicle, you are going to find it everywhere. If you're looking for people who are rotten and selfish, that's what you're going to see. Even if you cannot see the internal motivation, you can't see any of the story about why they're behaving the way that they are, it doesn't matter, because your mind is going to do its job to find what you are telling it to look for. So one of the beliefs that I adopted that has been really helpful to me in the way that I view people who are different than me, or people who struggle with things that I don't understand. A big shift for me was even like how I thought about people who were struggling with any kind of addiction. When I really believed that everybody has a reason for the way that they behave and the choices that they make, and that everybody is doing the best that they can with the internal and external tools that they have. This helped me become a much more compassionate, empathetic, better listener, better questioner, and much more humble when I realized how little I actually know about other people, how little I know about their circumstances, about their stories, about their choices. There's a great movie that is, I don't know, it must be from the 70s, 80s, 90s. I don't know. I grew up watching like the Haley Mills movies. So The Parent Trap, Pollyanna, and the movie Pollyanna is really sweet. I'll probably watch it with my kids at some point, but here's this child, she must be 11 or 12, and she's an orphan, and she was adopted by her aunt, and she moves to this new town, and her joy kind of just permeates everything in the town and really changes people's lives in a positive and profound way. And the town minister is this like from the pulpit preaching the fire and brimstone, and you're all terrible and God's judgment on you, and you're all evil people and you got to do a better job. And pretty much the entire town is like, every Sunday we lose our appetite for lunch because the sermon is so heavy and so nauseating to them. And then Pollyanna goes and visits the minister while he's out, kind of thinking about his sermon, and she explains to him that her dad was a minister as well, and that there was a quote that he read that changed his life, and she has it on this little chain or this little pendant, and that he used to always wear it. And so she shares it with the minister, and this is the quote: "When you look for the bad in mankind, expecting to find it, you surely will." And that's Abraham Lincoln. So if you look for the bad in mankind, expecting to find it, you surely will. And then, so he obviously is very moved by that. And then the following Sunday, they're all sitting in church, and he gets up to preach a sermon, and he says that for the next, however many weeks, he's going to preach through passages that talk about joy. He's going to preach through passages that talk about about the goodness of mankind, about our beautiful hearts and our love for one another. And everybody is, completely floored by that. But what I love so much about that is just that quote that what you look for, you are going to find. You are going to find it. You will always find evidence to confirm the things that you believe. And if we're going to believe that the first one is true, that we can change our beliefs, a question that I like to ask myself is, if I have a choice about what I believe, why would I continue to believe things that really don't serve me very well, that don't work for me, that make me feel yucky about myself or yucky about other people? Why would I continue to choose to believe those things if my beliefs are optional? If I get to choose what I believe, why wouldn't I choose things that help me love other people better, that help me empathize with other people better? I think many people are hesitant to do this because they feel like if I do that, then I'm just a sucker, that people are going to take advantage of me, that I am going to have my heart broken, that I am going to trust somebody that actually isn't trustworthy. And you're right. That is a risk. That is a risk that is very real if you're going to adopt a belief that everybody's doing the best that they can. And just because I believe that everybody's doing the best that they can doesn't mean that I am not a boundaried person, doesn't mean that I don't have good, clear boundaries or that I'm super clear on my values. That doesn't have anything to do with that. And there are times when I will get burned by other people because I choose to believe the best about them, because the alternative is not okay with me. The alternative of believing the worst about other people, I'm not okay with how that feels in my body to believe that about other people. So that is the price that I'm willing to pay in order to have these beliefs that actually work really well for me. So that's number 2, is that everyone's doing the best they can with the internal and external tools that they have. Now, the third belief that probably should have gone first, but I guess it was important for me to point out that we can change our beliefs. The number 3 one is that you are worthy. I really believe that many of the struggles that we have in our lives, many of the challenges that we have are because we don't have very great beliefs about ourselves. We don't believe that we are worthy of true love and connection with other people. We don't believe that we're worthy of pursuing the things that are important to us. We don't believe that we are worthy of health. We don't believe that we are worthy of deeply meaningful relationships. And this belief is the belief that a belief that we are unworthy is the belief that will keep us stuck more than anything else. So in the same way that the second belief that I offered, that everyone's doing the best that they can, if you are going to believe that about other people, you have to also believe that about yourself. If you find yourself being super judgmental person about other people, I highly recommend that you start to turn that gaze of judgment, shift it enough so that you can understand the areas where you're judging yourself. Because people who are in love with themselves, who know their own worth, who believe the best about themselves, also believe the best about other people. It also is important for us to believe that we are worthy of love, of connection, of safety and security, because that belief has to come before any of the work that we do to recognize the places where we're not awesome all the time, like the places where we are selfish, the places that we are unkind and unloving. Because if we come to those parts of ourselves believing that we are unworthy, then there will be so much shame. There will be so much shame that change can't happen within shame, because shame will always keep you small and secret. If you come to your own introspective work from a place of, I am worthy, I am loved, I am lovable, then it gives you the confidence, it gives you the permission to look in all areas of yourself, to look into all the nooks and crannies and all the dark places, and to be able to face them without fear. Because you know that even when you shine the light on that little, corner of yourself and you're like, ugh, like I didn't know that was there, that you can approach that part of yourself with so much love and empathy and curiosity and compassion, because you know that it doesn't change your worth. That anything that I could discover about myself doesn't make me any more or less worthy. It's just places that I haven't looked at yet. And so many of the places that we haven't looked at also like don't need to be riddled with shame, because many of those places we adopted in our childhood to keep us safe. All those places that we learn to lie or hide or manipulate or be selfish or run away or avoid or have angry outbursts. These are all coping techniques that we learned when we were kids. And as we believe that we can adopt new ways of behaving and new beliefs, because behavior is always a result of the things that we believe, that if we believe that we are lovable and worthy, then we don't have to be afraid to look at those parts of ourselves. So when you bump up against a belief that you don't want to have anymore, how do you actually change that? Well, that's a good question. How do you actually change that? Some of the ways that have helped me the most are meditation. In meditation, you don't really work on changing anything. You work on allowing. Meditation is all about accepting what is. So if you recognize a belief about yourself, maybe you have a belief that comes up that says, I'm so lazy. Okay, meditation helps you just observe that you believe that about yourself without judgment, without shame, just with observation. There are things like clinical hypnosis that can be super duper helpful when you're addressing some of these beliefs that are really deeply buried, these subconscious beliefs that just dictate how you behave seemingly without your permission. So there is really only so much that you can do from your conscious mind, because a lot of the drivers are from your subconscious. So again, like meditation is phenomenal for this. Hypnosis is really good for this. Cognitive behavioral therapy, regular traditional talk therapy. These are all really wonderful tools to be able to change what you believe. And I think that you will find that as scary as it is to hold your beliefs with open hands and say, okay, I'm willing to let these change at any point with new information. I'm going to hold these lightly. The more you will recognize and be aware of other beliefs that you're just acting out unconsciously. These behaviors that maybe you've done for a long time, you start to catch yourself doing them. There starts to be like this buffer between your response and your reaction to something, or the stimulus and the response to something. There starts to be more of a buffer. So if before your kids are doing something that you don't want them to do and you lash out and you yell at them, the more aware that you become, the recognition of the feeling that's rising up in you as your kids are doing something you don't want them to do, and the yelling, there becomes a bigger and bigger buffer, because you become aware of your reactivity and your responses. And then you can start to ask yourself, okay, what do I believe about my children in these moments? What do I believe about myself? What do I believe about how kids should behave? What do I believe about myself as a mother or a dad? What do I believe about my role? What do I believe about my kids' behavior says about me as a parent or as a person? What are my beliefs about control, about other people? What, you know what I'm saying? So this is a big thing for us to be able to start unpacking what our beliefs are that are informing our behaviors. Because again, our behaviors will always, always, always follow our beliefs. So if you find behavior in your life that you don't like and that you want to change, you have to follow the rabbit trail back up to the beliefs. You have to figure out, why am I self-sabotaging myself? Why am I people-pleasing? Why am I not telling the truth here? Why am I saying yes when I want to say no? All of these can be dialed back into beliefs that we have about ourselves, about others, our beliefs about what our role is in the world, our beliefs about our identity, our beliefs about how our relationships are supposed to behave. And the more that you question your beliefs, the more that you choose your beliefs on purpose, the more satisfying your life is going to be, the more alive you are going to feel, and the more invested you are going to feel in creating a life that is so deeply aligned with who you are at your core. So this was a fun, quick episode. And some of this really might just be like a rehashing of things that you already know. Maybe this is not new to you. Maybe you have already delved a lot into your beliefs, but this is so good for me to revisit these things all the time, because I can get into these ruts where like I feel stuck in my life. And when I recognize that the only thing that is keeping me stuck is a belief that I'm stuck, then I have the power to change my life by changing my beliefs about life. So thank you for joining me for this episode. I hope that this was helpful and that you start to really choose and adopt beliefs that really work for you, and that this very short list of 3 things will just help you get on your way to adopting new beliefs. So before we go, P.S.